Good afternoon and welcome everyone to another edition of NAWLEE's Leadership Series. The NAWLEE board is composed of amazing, accomplished women, so each month we've recorded a webinar that allows them to share their wisdom and experiences with our members. Today's webinar is titled Honoring NAWLEE's Past 30 Years, Leading the Future of Law Enforcement, and it brings together experienced leaders to reflect on the journey of women in the profession. I'm excited to share that all of today's panelists are also NAWLEE past presidents. And if you've missed any of our previous webinars, I encourage you to go to our website, nawlee.org, where you can find them in the Programs and Education section of our new website. Back to today. Today's panelists will discuss the progress that has been made, the challenges that remain, and the opportunities ahead for women who aspire to lead, mentor, and influence the future of law enforcement. Whether you are earlier in your career, a seasoned professional, or a community supporter, this discussion will provide perspective, encouragement, and practical insight into shaping the future of law enforcement. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to today's moderator, immediate past president for NAWLEE, Assistant Chief Gina Hawkins.
Thank you, Jessica. Good morning, afternoon, or whatever time period you're watching this webinar. I've been super excited about this day, especially because to bring back these panelist members is very critical, and we're doing it during Women History Month. So why I thought about this webinar is because, just like you said, Jessica, women have played this vital role in shaping this profession. We've also overcome barriers. We've been resilient. We've been committed to service. But now, when I have the opportunity, you'll see, to bring back these pioneers, they're truly pioneers in this male-dominated field, we're going to have a conversation. We're going to ask them for their wisdom. We're going to look at what they're doing now. We'll be able to talk about what they did in the past. But without further ado, I would like to introduce the panel. So the first panel member we have is Chief Dawn Layman. Chief Dawn Layman recently retired after 32 years with a 32-year career with Lenexa. Am I pronouncing that right? Lenexa. Kansas Police Department, where she served as the Chief of Police from 2020 to 2025. She now serves as the Chief of Police for Breckenridge, Colorado. As a past two-term president of NAWLEE, yes, I said that. She had such a great time. She came back to serve again. Two-time president and the 2015 NAWLEE Motorola Women Law Enforcement Executive of the Year, the WOOLEE Award. She currently serves on the board of directors of the International Association of Chief of Police. Chief Layman, Dawn, welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Our next chief, Chief Katherine Perez. Chief Katherine Perez began her law enforcement career in the United States Army as a military police officer. She went on to join the Hartford Police Department in Hartford, Connecticut, and as a patrol officer in 1983, advancing through the department, but before retiring in April of 2004 at the rank of captain. She became the Chief of Police in District Heights, Maryland, upon her retirement from the Hartford Police Department. In 2006, she was appointed to the position of Independent Juvenile Justice Monitor for the state of Maryland with the State Attorney General's Office. After a nationwide search, Chief Perez was chosen to start the first Bowie Police Department in September 11, 2006. Chief Perez served as the Assistant Chief over the Law Enforcement Unit of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors from 2010 to 2022. In 2023, Chief Perez was hired as the first female chief of police for the Georgetown University Police Department in Washington, D.C. And in 2004, she served as the Associate Vice President of the Public Safety for Johns Hopkins Medicine. President Chief serves as the Chief of Police with the City of Mount Rainier, Maryland. Chief Perez holds a bachelor's and a master's degree from Trinity College out of Hartford, Connecticut. Welcome, Chief.
Thank you so much, Gina.
Now, last but not certainly least, Major Rhonda Lawson. Major Lawson is a native from Washington, D.C. and a graduate of the University of North Texas, where she earned a bachelor's in science and criminal justice. She also holds a master's degree in emergency service management from Columbia Southern University and is a graduate of Northwestern University School of Police Staff and Command. Major Lawson began her law enforcement career in 1983 as a patrol officer with the Forest Hill Police Department in Texas. In 1997, she joined the Texas Department of Public Safety and serves as a Highway Patrol Trooper in Alpine, for Stockton and Hearst. Throughout her career as a DP with Department of Public Safety, Major Lawson has been promoted through the ranks of sergeant, lieutenant, captain, and serving Sherman, Hearst, and Corpus Christi. In 2012, she transferred to the Division of Emergency Management, and in 2016, she was appointed to the rank of major. In 2019, she served as the Highway Patrol Chief's Office, where she currently serves now. Major Lawson holds a Master of Peace Officer's license and is a certified emergency manager. She's a member of the National Association of Women Law Enforcement Executives, NAWLEE, and is a member of the International Association of Chiefs of Police. She's a member of NOBLE, as well as the National Black State Troopers Coalition, the Department of Public Safety Officers Association, and Executive Women in Texas. She's also a member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. Major Lawson is also a 2018 recipient of the Women Law Enforcement Executive Year Award, Motorola, the Wooley Award, by the National Association of NAWLEE. So, Major Lawson, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be among you wonderful chiefs.
Thank you. So, I specifically chose these women because they play a special role, but I also chose them for different reasons, and I'll share a little bit. One, we have representation from just about every aspect of law enforcement. We have federal representation, we have military representation, we have local, we have sheriff, we have state representation, we have university representation, we have private sector representation, state a couple times. So with this experience and with this wisdom, I thought these women will be ideal candidates for being on the panel to share with our members and whoever else is watching. So let's get started. I want to start off with you, Chief Perez, because you began your career, as mentioned, with the military police in the Army. When you joined Hartford Police Department in '83, when women were still significantly underrepresented, please tell me, what are the biggest barriers that you faced at that time, and how did these experiences shape your leadership philosophy today?
Well, thank you. I think when we look at the history, I feel so old when I think about it. But
we're not claiming that, by the way.
Let's cut that right out. No. So the early '80s was interesting. There weren't a whole lot of women, as you said, and that belonged to the profession. It wasn't like anyone was out there trying to recruit us either. It had to be something you really, really wanted. I feel blessed that I chose to go into the Army first, the military police, because they really got me ready for what I was going to face and made me pretty tough. I think women were still trying to prove that we belonged in law enforcement at all. People were doubting, the big conversation, our physical ability. That back then there was a whole lot of, are we watering down the requirements to be a police officer to have women there, and cultural challenges. Besides that, leadership capabilities. There were very little mentorship availability because there weren't that many women before us. There were, but they, some of them, at least with the Hartford Police Department, they had limited roles. I had 2 female sergeants at that time. So I think the military got me ready with discipline and resilience and accountability, and it helped me to form my leadership goals and beliefs. So I think the commitment and competence is where, what I think I realized: you can't beat me if I'm confident and I'm right there next to you. So that was really exactly. So and what I think now is that, as a leader, I want to try to remove the barriers that were there when I started, and that I had to fight through. So I think it's really being very intentional moving forward. As we are now leaders, we know what we went through, and it was very unnecessary. But I think now it's our turn to change the trajectory for the next 30 years.
See, how many people were in your academy class?
I'm sorry?
How many women were in your academy class?
7.
7 out of how many?
60.
That one was a lot at that time.
Oh, it was. It
A lot
was.
at that time, yeah.
Well, I think we only, when I retired, my class, maybe 4 or 5 were about 4 made it through the whole time. So
Oh,
we lost
so out of
quite a
7,
few.
who graduated?
Yeah,
Seven.
made it to the 20 years,
Retirement. Got
that
it.
stayed with it, because there's so many. When you talk about the barriers, the quality of life, the words quality of life and life balance and all of that wasn't here
It was not at all. Not at
in
all.
the 80s. So a lot of women chose to leave law enforcement. It was not easy.
Thank you. Chief Layman. So as I mentioned it, not just besides being a chief at multiple agencies and being long serving, you actually served as the president of NAWLEE twice. Thank you for that. But you recently retired after more than 3 decades. Tell us then, when you retired, what made you step back into the role as a chief with Breckenridge, Colorado, and how does that transition? What does that transition say about your leadership longevity and the purpose of this profession?
Yeah, so I was, after 30 years with Lenexa PD retiring in December 2025, that was very difficult. Obviously built a lot of relationships, but at the same time too, I also didn't want to stay too long. I felt like I had accomplished some things there, some goals that I set out, and I had people coming behind me. So I could have stayed in Lenexa for 5 or 7 more years and been fine, but what was that going to do to my second in command by the time I got to leave? So again, kind of some history lessons here. I was a police officer in Pennsylvania before I came to Kansas. And part of my reason for coming to Kansas is I'd be closer to Colorado. For the first 20 years, I never made it to Colorado, but the last 10 to 12 years, I
Why
came
are we trying to get Colorado?
What, just because skiing and it's beautiful
Okay.
and things like
Okay.
that. So, but kind of backing up, October 1st was my 32nd year anniversary at Lenexa. And that was the day I was driving out to Breckenridge for my interview. So, of course, when I left Pennsylvania to come to Kansas, I cried all the way across Kansas because I had so many friends and everything. Same thing coming to Breckenridge. By the time I left that Friday from Breck, I had a job offer. I cried all the way back home. But this is what I kind of remembered. You have to get out of your comfort zone. And that's kind of and I'm reflecting back, I'm like, hey, 32 years ago, I left Pennsylvania to come to Kansas. And look how great that turned out. Who's to say that this next step is not going to be that great? So I think for me, having the opportunity to work in Breckenridge, it's a smaller police department. It allows me to kind of carry forward those lessons that I've learned throughout my career in a new community. And it also represents, I think, something important about leadership, that it just doesn't end with retirement or a title. Like we're in this profession because of the service, the stewardship, and investing kind of in the next generation of leaders. And I feel that that's what I've tried to do throughout my career, is invest in other people coming up behind me, whether male, female, whoever. But that to me is kind of really my core purpose, is to help others get to where they need to be. And I had a lot of mentors. Some of them obviously are on this call. But yeah, I think that's really what's been important to me and how that transition is coming about.
And now you're comfortable in Colorado, right?
Right.
Yeah. So that whole angst initially, yes. Major Lawson. So here's a special tidbit no one really knows, so I'm going to share right now. I don't even remember. I think it was maybe 2013. We were at ICP conference, coming down the escalator. I didn't know her at all. And she just stopped me and she said, "What are you doing tomorrow morning?" And passed me a card, "Come to NAWLEE, the breakfast." And it was I was like, "What? What is this?" That was the first time I ever found out about NAWLEE. And it was because of you that I joined NAWLEE, because I showed up the next day for breakfast and then my eyes opened up to say, wow, this is okay. Yes. So thank you, first of all, for that. I'm here because of you. But you also have been with the Texas Department of Public Safety 29 of your 33 years. Now, as you look back from the earlier years, what leadership lessons have you learned over your career that you wish you had known earlier and would be important for women who aspire to lead law enforcement organizations like yourself?
Well, as you mentioned, I've been at Texas Department of Public Safety for nearly 3 decades. And when you say that, I'm thinking, I know Chief Perez mentioned she's old. I think I'm older than all of you guys over here. But, there are a few leadership lessons that I wish that I had fully understood earlier in my career. And one of the first things is don't wait for permission to lead. Now, that may sound simple, but, early in my career, I thought that leadership was tied strictly to the rank or to the title of a person. And then, as time went on, I soon realized that leadership is not about rank and title. It's about influence, the credibility of that person, and how you show up every day, regardless of what your title or what your rank is. And another important thing is that you have to have the ability to impact those around you. Those are some of the lessons that I wish that I had learned early on in my career. Also learned the importance of finding your voice and using that voice, because there were moments early on in my career, most people won't believe it because I do talk quite a lot, but early on that I hesitated to speak up, especially because being one of the few or the only person in that room. What I soon came to realize is that perspective, especially a diverse perspective, is critical in this profession. And then once I became more confident, I would say confidence, I should say, I was able to contribute in a more meaningful way and advocate not only for myself, but for others. I had a chief one time that he kept asking me questions and that they were female related. And at first I thought, why do you keep asking me all these questions? And I did. And I said, and I asked him, not quite like this, but I said, Chief, I said, you tend to ask me a lot of questions about, females. And, he plainly said, Rhonda, you are my highest ranking female in highway patrol. And the moment he said that, it dawned on me. I was looking at it from a different lens instead of looking at it from the lens that he was coming from, that he valued my opinion and my perspective. And that's when I also realized that, diversity, a diverse perspective does really matter and is very critical in our profession. One other leadership lesson I would say is that resiliency. And I know Chief Perez talked about resiliency, but it's very critical because throughout our careers, there are going to be challenges, setbacks, and moments where we question whether we belong, and that's okay. And I can recall a time in my career in both Chief Layman and Chief Perez were around, because I want to say, I think this was during my presidency. There was a setback, I can recall as a captain, and it forced me to really reflect on my purpose and my commitment. But I will tell you this, that experience, it didn't define me, but it strengthened me. And when you're going through setbacks, you keep your circle of friends small. And I remember, I'm reaching out to Chief Perez because you can't talk to everyone. And because we have the Washington, D.C. connection, I reached out to her and she just, she gave me some great advice. And then she also said, Rhonda, get off of your pity party, and sometimes you need that person to remind you, hey, this is just a setback, but it didn't define me. And what it actually did is it strengthened me. And I know that's something that I want other women to understand, that setbacks are not the end of your story. They're just part of your growth.
That's awesome. So far, a setback is an opportunity for a comeback, that I heard you say.
Yes.
And then, Chief Perez, you hit it on the nail. Consistency, but you also say the competency. They can't take that, and that's credit. And so far, Chief Layman, service, evaluating your purpose. This is why we're doing this. And what is a retirement? I don't even know what that is, but you all so far have that gift. Okay. So, Chief Perez, I don't know if you know this, but I know how difficult what you did, which is you helped build the first Bowie Police Department. Not many people understand that. You've also led many different agencies, correct? The reason why I understand that, because I also helped start up a new police department, and that's one of the hardest things I ever had to do. And then after you became the chief for Georgetown, so what leadership approach have you found most effective for supporting and advancing women in policing today? With all your agencies, think about it. You have the federal, you have Bowie, you have state. Out of all those experiences, share with our audience what approach have you found most effective for supporting and advancing women in policing today?
Gina, I know you know my pain, but it was also one of the proudest moments of my career. Bowie, you sit back and you realize that you're going to have to know every aspect of leadership. You're not going to just be good at one little area. And that's why I emphasize with women, mix it up. Go here, go there in your department, learn new things. And I can tell you, I'm sure a lot of people can understand that there were many times when I thought, why don't they leave me where I'm at? I'm good at this. I like it, and I'm comfortable. And
I just got it down.
yes, I just did this. And there's a guy that I worked for, and I used to think, oh my God, he's driving me crazy. What he was doing was developing me, and I didn't know it. So I learned so much from that. And I will tell you my moment. It was when my first chief's job in District Heights. When I was in Hartford, he said, okay, I want you to go and work on the budget and do this, that, and the other. And I was like, what? I can't even balance my checkbook. Are you crazy? Why are you doing this? And when I sat down at my desk in District Heights in my first chief's position, and it was a smaller department, I came from a big department, I thought, oh my God, the budget was the first thing. And I thought, had I never done that, and all the things that he made me do. So and later on, I was able to ask him about it and thank him. And I told him he wasn't my favorite person when we were in Hartford. And he said, Kathy, I saw in you what you didn't see in yourself. So I think about that when I look at other women that I'm trying to pull out of their comfort zone. And one of a young lady from the Fed, she wanted nothing to do with me when I was there. And I said, no, you're coming to NAWLEE, sit next to me on the plane and don't eat my snacks because they're for Rhonda. But I brought her there and she saw what you saw, Gina, when you came to NAWLEE. So part of it is sometimes pulling somebody out of their comfort zone and being, like I said earlier, intentional about developing people and mentoring them. And, if someone calls you like Rhonda on a bad day, being there to listen and be able to empathize and say, I've been there and you'll get through this and we'll move on. And always looking for opportunities to professionally develop people, not just women, but be intentional about women, giving them those opportunities and also creating an environment where you're approachable. I think that's been my biggest success is that I go in and I'm like all up in your business and, hey, have you thought about this training and that training? And, I can help you prepare. And I really enjoy that. So everyone here knows that this profession is a team effort, right? And I think you have to look at mentorship in a lot of different ways. I think Rhonda was hitting on something with the vantage point. You learn a lot from people who don't do it right, but and from those that do it right. But sometimes you don't see someone pulling you and stretching you until you've gone through it. And
Yeah.
I'm very, very intentional about pulling people out of their comfort zone, talking to them, getting to know them, and then telling them my story and why, what I did and how, I stumbled many, many times, and you just the resilience part. So there's these themes that keep coming back, and whether it's building buoy from scratch, or working in a medicine at Johns Hopkins, very different things. But you know what? That's how you can do 40 years in
That's
law
right.
enforcement. Mix it up a little bit, and try. I didn't know how I would do in a university, and I didn't just go to any university. I went to Georgetown, and it was like, oh my God. And luckily I had a great team, but you're learning. And I think that lifelong learning has been really helpful along the way. And I've stretched myself in ways, and I've had the imposter syndrome, like, what am I doing
Yeah.
here? And not thinking I belong. And I've tried it all, and I love it. And I love this profession. So I want to, I come in any position I come in, I start succession planning right there, and start looking for the next group of leaders that are going to come up in this organization. So that's how I view it as a leader now, in all of these places that I have been.
That's great. Yeah, I too also had leaders who saw in me and made me uncomfortable, but also one said, it is my responsibility to build the future. That's why I'm committing my time to you. And then I had another one that said, hey, who controls the money controls the agency. Come learn this budget. That's when I was like, but I was like you, Chief Perez. My checking account, I don't even know what it looks like. But this agency's business, oh, I know where every dollar is. I know where so the commitment to that, but that's great.
That's
So
right.
as we touched on a little bit, Rhonda, I'm not going to you. You touched on it to talk about the ability to call someone from
Mhm.
another agency, that trust that's important. So as we introduce different associations, all of us are likely members of ICP. We probably have some NA membership association. Chief Layman, NAWLEE, right? You have been the leader as the leader, the president twice. That's a lot of responsibility to have to recycle, but do it twice. Tell us, looking back in the day, because we all served as a president at different times in these last 3 decades, but looking back during your time, tell us during that time, the first time, and then tell us the second time, what was the environment for women in law enforcement leadership, and how has it changed?
Yeah, I'd say, reflecting back on my time as NAWLEE president and even earlier in my career, there was simply obviously fewer women in leadership. And I think even in NAWLEE has grown over the time that I was president and things like that, which is fantastic. And many times women are the only female leader in our agency, and that still rings true somewhat today. But that's what makes NAWLEE so important. And I do think sometimes people hear the National Association of Women Law Enforcement Executives, they feel they have to be an executive to be in there. I always tell people you do not. So, we always talked about bringing somebody along. So I think as leaders in our department, we have to make sure we're sending people or tapping people on the shoulder to attend NAWLEE. But, I was very fortunate because Chief Ellen Hansen was my chief.
Yes.
She was one of the founders of NAWLEE. So I was able to experience one of the first NAWLEE conferences back in 1996 in Boston. And I was very young in my career, walked into a room and I see all these women chiefs or commanders or things like that there. And I was just kind of in awe. And several of you probably heard me tell this story before, but that really kind of shaped what I would say my mantra is kind of moving forward is you have to see to be. So you have to see people in those leadership positions to even consider that you could even that you can even be. So she really helped me show me what leadership could really look like, and really reinforced that lifting others along the way or bringing others along to NAWLEE, or just kind of in their career. So again, I think today we're seeing more women in leadership positions and agencies, which is very encouraging, but we still have a long way to go. And hopefully I'll get to talk later because I have I think a pretty important thing regarding that. But I really think that mentorship and the visibility really remain as important as ever because, really that's what I've learned along the way. You have to see people in those positions to even consider being there, but you have to help people get there. We talk about, Rhonda giving you the flyer to say, join NAWLEE, or here at IACP a few months ago, we had a meeting and, we always refer to save a seat for a sister. Well, she was running late and I'm like, right here. And that was like the thing. You have to do those types of things. And I think that's really important. So again, throughout my career kind of with NAWLEE is, we were trying to build NAWLEE through those times. And I think, we want to try to leave the organization, just like when you're chief, better than when you found it. And I think that's what has evolved over time, just with anybody. So everybody here try to leave NAWLEE in a better position. And obviously membership has grown. So we are doing great things. NAWLEE's doing great things and continues to do great things.
Absolutely. I took it for granted because I started with the city of Atlanta during a time period where the sheriff back in the early 90s was a female, first female, Jackie Bear Washington. And then I had a police chief that was a female at that time. So I saw it. So I was kind of oblivious to the challenges until I came to NAWLEE. And then I realized how many women are in this profession by themselves in an agency, lacking support. And I think that also really drove my passion of saying, what can they be going through? And inspired me a little bit, because if they don't have any support and is resilient, that says something. So that motivated me as well. So Major, let's just talk let's go over just the last decade. Let's talk about the culture in law enforcement. Now, decades is a long time, but it's a short amount of time. How has the culture of law enforcement changed for women over the past decade? And what progress have you seen that makes you optimistic about our future?
So over the last, I would say the past decade, I've seen meaningful shift in the culture of law enforcement. And when it comes to women, previously women were seen as the exception. And there was an unspoken expectation that you had to prove that you belong, but then you had to continue proving that you were there. Today, while that hasn't completely disappeared, the mindset is changing. I think that more agencies are becoming intentional about retaining and promoting women, and that really matters. As Chief Layman mentioned, she talked about NAWLEE. There are a lot more networking groups out there, a lot more leadership programs and national initiatives that focus specifically on supporting women in this profession. So I'm glad to see that. One thing that does give me a lot of optimism is the next generation. And, it's funny because when we were young in our careers, we were always talking about, that generation, that generation ahead of us, not knowing that we were the next generation. And so now that we have become those people, I'm very optimistic about the next generation. The women who are now coming into law enforcement today I think they're very confident, very capable. And they're coming in there with the mindset that there's an expectation for them to lead, to go in supervisory positions. And I think that that's also a good thing. I noticed that this new generation, that they're not waiting for permission to lead. They're just stepping up to the plate. They recognize what needs to be done and they're doing it. This brings a fresh perspective And I think this also helps those agencies who have not evolved where they need to be at this time. This fresh perspective is assisting with that. But as we all have mentioned, I think it's also important to acknowledge that challenges still exist for us in law enforcement. As I mentioned, some of the culture has not evolved as quickly as it needs to. But where I see the difference now is that those conversations are now happening openly. And when those conversations are in an open form, now people are being held accountable to address those issues. And not only that agency, but it's accountability from all of us that are in that profession. So those are some of the things that I've seen and what I'm optimistic about the future.
Thank you. Chief Perez, as someone who's broken multiple leadership barriers, we know this. How important is mentorship? We mentioned a little bit. And visibility for young women entering law enforcement, and what responsibilities do current leaders have to cultivate for the next generation?
I think Dawn hit upon it very, very well. Seeing is believing. We can do it. Representation matters. It allows people to see what is possible. I think the idea of the chief is up in a Eiffel Tower or the ivory tower and they're not approachable. I think women have a different viewpoint, and I echo what Rhonda was saying, that being able to approach someone and talk to them about about what they're going through. When I was starting my journey, there were no women in command staff. Let me not even say there were, like I said, there were 2 sergeants that were female, and that was a big deal. And now what do we see? We see women leading agencies and shaping policy and really having international roles, federal roles, that are very powerful. And I think if you think about that changes the narrative for younger people because they can see it. I agree with you, Rhonda. I think young women are much more confident. What I think we have a role to play in is that your career progression, right? And letting them know there are some steps you need, and if you skip them, you're going to be at a deficit, and you don't want to do that. And the whole and changing the narrative of I've got mine, you get yours, figure it out. We can't, I think that's gone, but I'm sure there's still a few people that lead that way. But balancing the professional challenges that we all have. It could be budget, it could be philosophy in a particular agency. Again, as leaders, I think we need to be intentional about looking at our people, finding what their strengths are and building on them. I think that's important. Watching them, talk to them, what interests them, but not being afraid to send them into a different area that they may go, oh, no, I don't want to do that. No, you gotta learn. And I think also along that same line is slow down, take the steps that are necessary. When you're sitting with me and that first interview and you're coming into my organization and I say, what do you see yourself in 5 years? I see myself sitting where you are. Well, honey, that took 40 years.
Yes.
And just kind of tell them, be honest and be open to opening doors for them, but also letting them know that there's a certain skill set I think that's important to learn along the way. And I have seen people who have gone from, not going through the ranks and not learning different things, and they're not as successful. So I think for me, that's been the key for me is being in different positions within an organization has helped me along the way, and explaining that to a young person who's just got so much energy and it's lovely, but I also need to roll it back a little bit. So.
Chief Layman, tell us, what advice would you give a young woman just starting their career in law enforcement today?
So probably several things, but I think first off is really just focusing on becoming an excellent police officer and serving your community well, right? You have to have that foundation. But at the same time, I think you also need to invest in your own development, seeking mentors, asking questions, taking advantage of training and leadership opportunities, joining organizations like NAWLEE and IACP. I think that's one thing, you know, and I always heard in the private sector, right? If you want to be in the corner suite, and you're a custodian, you don't dress like a custodian, you dress your next part. So you should be doing that as well as far as your leadership and your career building. So seek out those higher either educational opportunities or organizations to become involved in, because you're going to learn things no matter, there's always learning experiences and things you get from any of those organizations. I mean, during my time with NAWLEE, I learned a lot early in my career when other people probably weren't afforded the opportunity as an officer to be a part of NAWLEE. But there were also several people in NAWLEE that paid their own way to attend NAWLEE conferences. They didn't wait for their organization. I always used to tell people, hey, tell your organization that, hey, if you give me the training time off, I'll pay my flight or whatever. And then a lot of times they would just end up paying for them. So don't be afraid to ask. Really for those opportunities. And I think kind of one of the other things is, you know, everybody here, Rhonda and Kathy and you, don't wait for somebody to tap you on the shoulder. You pursue those opportunities, continue learning, and be willing to step out of your comfort zone. And I think most importantly, you have to support one another as females. And I think sometimes that's a challenge. But I also think that's one of the greatest strengths of NAWLEE, is women helping other women succeed. And I think that's what continues to move our profession forward. So those are some of the things that I would kind of give advice to a younger officer or somebody starting their career in law enforcement.
Thank you. So we talked about the great advice, right? And everything's been awesome. Now let's get down to the nitty gritty of learning specific things. So Major Lawson, what skill sets will future leaders who in women law enforcement, what will they need? What kind of skill sets will they need in order to be successful?
I think that they're going to need a combination of timeless leadership skills and the ability to adapt to an evolving environment. And so when I talk about timeless leadership skills, those are the qualities that we always have to have and that define effective leaders, like integrity, credibility, decisiveness, handling things under pressure, communication. And, you know, we sometimes say a lot emotional intelligence, but it is very critical to have emotional intelligence in our professional, and accountability. You know, when people know that you can be counted on, there's a level of trust now that they have with you. And, you know, our environment is always changing, and from technology to emergency management to crisis I mean, just a plethora of things that requires one to be able to evolve and adapt. And in law enforcement, even though it's been, you know, if we look at the 10-year, you know, decade, it will keep changing. You know, it will keep changing every 10 years, every 5 years. So we just have to stay cognizant of that and be ready to pivot and deal with whatever that next thing that comes our way.
So that was pretty awesome. And I'm going to ask you one thing. I'm going to ask you to repeat some bullet points, what you just said, because, and the reason why, I asked for skill sets, right? And so often, society or whoever thinks, oh, you got to be able to shoot, you got to be able to fight, you got to be able to pull a trigger, right? What kind of skill sets to be in law enforcement? Hit those bullet points again, especially the main one, adaptability, but that you mentioned that people don't really think that is a skill set that is learned, can be learned and achieved and mastered. So hit the bullet points again so they can hear it again.
So I talked about accountability.
Yes.
Communication.
Yes.
Emotional intelligence.
Yes.
Integrity. Even though you would think that most people know that, but sometimes folks forget.
Yes.
Forget it. Integrity, credibility, decisiveness, and to handle things under pressure.
Thank
Those
you.
are all
Those are
important skill
key, will
sets.
take you anywhere. Very good. Thank you. Chief Perez, how can an organization better support women to aspire to leadership roles?
They can look at ways of knocking down some of those barriers that we've all been fighting for so many years. Inflexible scheduling, think about being more creative, and work-life balance challenges. And you know what I think something we don't talk about is outdated leadership expectations. What does that look like in our organization? I think I touched upon the Eiffel Tower of the chief and command staff, that they don't interact and they don't talk to them. Some of the best ideas I've ever had as a chief have come from just having a slice of pizza with somebody that worked for me or with me, and you just never know. Maybe capitalizing on, and I did touch on this, capitalizing on people's strengths. One of the things I realized very early on is I was short, and I wasn't a great runner. And so you have to figure out ways of, jumping over fences. And I use it as a metaphor, but it was the truth. I mean, I had to it was funny when you're running and you see a garbage can, that I'm getting on that garbage can, and that's how I'm going to get over. And I think that's a great way to explain how we need to see things. There's people bring great things inside of them. They bring their experiences, their vantage points. And if we learn to not use that as a deterrent and more as, oh, I need that. And I think we are doing that. I think law enforcement has learned that, especially with women, that we have a way of talking to people that's a little bit less intimidating at times, and that we can diffuse and de-escalate in ways that, instead of, back in 1983, they were saying that, I was trying to prove that I was the right person for the job and that I could do the job. Now, I think the conversation has started to change, and as it should. What do I bring to the table that is different and that we can use for our communities? And I think that's really, really important. So I think part of that mantra is that, you want to shape the difference, the future of women in policing. You got to be deliberate, as I've said so many times, in how we prepare, position, and promote them, not just getting them through the door. Because as we all struggle with retaining them, I said back in 1983, they didn't retain all the whole 7 women that we had because of that. So those barriers are something that I think we learn to not be as rigid in our leadership, and try to be more flexible in looking to solve problems. Right? It's not one cookie cutter decision has to be this way. Why? Find people that can do the job in a different way. And if the end result is great, then that's okay. We will just try it a different way.
You mentioned it also early on, trying to be something that we were not trying to be like replicate the other people, when the value is how different we are. Yes. And what we all can bring together that's different, and appreciating that and valuing that we're different, and we can do a lot of different things, and that's a bigger value. So thank you. We're getting close to the end, Chief Layman. I'm gonna give my last question to you. I'm gonna go to you, Major. How do you hope your leadership will impact the next generation of women in this profession? What's your legacy?
I want to be able to, and I hope that I have created a pathway and a sense of possibility. Like Chief Layman said, people believe what they see. And I hope that by seeing me and others promote to where we are, that they know that that's attainable. I want them to look at my journey, both the good and the not so good, but to see that you can overcome things. Who would have, if I thought from a setback and, then I get promoted to major. So it's how you handle those things and move on from that. When I first came to the department, I remember when I went to recruit school in 1997, there was a female and she came into our and into the bay, and I happened to come early because we had an ice storm, and she introduced herself, and she said her name was Nita Bowen, and she's a sergeant. And I looked and I said, "Are there any other female sergeants besides you in Highway Patrol?" She said no. She said she was the first. And that was the moment that I decided that that was going to be my next goal. Now, I was naive. I didn't know that you have to have 4 years on in order for you to, promote, but everyone who knew that that's what I wanted to do. And so there weren't many commissioned women in leadership roles at that time in Highway Patrol. And so I am deeply grateful for those who came before me, who opened the door, and created some opportunities, and allowed so many of us to step into leadership roles. But I also have to say that there were men, who supported women
Absolutely.
along the way.
Yes.
And what they did was they were able to widen that path so that more
Yes.
of us could promote into those leadership positions. Today, I commission women at DPS. We serve across many agencies in our Highway Patrol. Criminal investigations, Homeland Security, Highway Patrol, and the Texas Rangers. And when I came on, did not have that, did not see that. So my goal is for the next generation to see themselves and these positions and other positions, whether it's in Highway Patrol or any other, division that we have, because as we all have said, this next generation needs to see themselves in these positions, know that it's possible, and to be inspired to step confidently into those leadership roles.
All right, Chief Layman, you get the last question. Because you served twice as the president. So the last question is, as we approach our 30th anniversary at our conference in Los Angeles, what do you believe the next generation of women leaders must focus on to shape the future of law enforcement? Because we are doing that right now, but what do you think the next generation needs to focus on?
Yeah, so I think, as we're approaching this 30th anniversary, I think the next generation of women they're currently playing a critical role in shaping the future of policing, but they're going to continue doing that. That includes building trust with our communities, supporting officer wellness, leading organizations that are adaptable and forward thinking. I think that's going to be key. And I think that's where most of people that have been successful as women leaders, that's kind of what they have kind of focused on. But I think one of the important things, and we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, is remember that our careers are rarely linear, right? The challenges that we face along the way often become those defining moments or experiences that shape us into stronger leaders and more effective leaders, kind of as we move forward. And I always kind of remembered this, handle failure as you handle success. When you don't get that sergeant's promotion, treat it as a learning experience and move on. Don't pout about it. But I remember the first time I put in for a sergeant's position, I didn't get it. I thought I should have. But the next time around, that was one of the things that was brought up in my interview board. You just took the information and moved forward. You didn't cry, pout, whatever, like some people do. So always remember, handle failure like you handle success. And then kind of one of the other things we've kind of hit on, Rhonda hit on it earlier too, is, we talk about always being first. So my belief is that being the first, it is an important milestone, but it shouldn't be the end of the story. And kind of how I kind of first came to realize this was back in 2016 when Chief Sue Reisling, who was also a founding member of NAWLEE, retired from the University of Wisconsin, and then Kristen Roman, who was a NAWLEE member, became chief. So, and she stepped into that role. And for me, I think when you're no longer first, that is kind of hit the nail on the head. For me, actually, I've just kind of been in the right place at the right time, I guess. But obviously in Lenexa, Chief Hansen was there. I wasn't a first, so that was good. Actually, even here in Breck, we had a female police chief two
Oh.
chiefs. So I wasn't a first here either. So for me, kind of remembering that, you know, every generation of women in law enforcement, we do stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. And it's our responsibility to continue opening doors for others so that they can step forward and lead. And then again, when we don't have to talk about first, that's when I think we'll all know that we've truly been successful. And then kind of picking that back on to NAWLEE, because I think NAWLEE's core and the legacy of NAWLEE is really, and what it was founded on, is ensuring that we continue to lead, inspire, and mentor others in our careers. I do a mic drop on that.
Thank you. Did it is
Yes.
absolutely mic drop. Thank you very much. All I can say in this room right here alone, over 130 years of wisdom, experience that is priceless. We could pay for your advice, the wisdom you shared, and make books about it. So I cannot say thank you enough for you all first answering a call to come on this webinar to share just a teeny bit chinkle of what people need to know before they meet you at the conference in Los Angeles in April. So again, thank you again for coming. It was an amazing insight. Can't wait to watch it again and listen to the wisdom, but so many great nuggets. All right, without further ado, Jessica, I'll throw it back over to you.
What a great conversation. You all are truly inspiring. So thank you so much for sharing your time and your insights and your advice today. There are some great nuggets from your discussion. I'm confident that I speak for all the members when I say we appreciate all you've done to support women in this profession. And of course, thank you for your dedication to NAWLEE. The theme, as Gina mentioned, of this year's annual conference is honoring our past, forging our future. And I have to say, it's my pleasure and honor to serve as NAWLEE's executive director during this milestone, because it gives me the opportunity to sing your praises and acknowledge all your contributions to NAWLEE. And for those who are watching this webinar and you have not yet registered, please go to the NAWLEE website, nawlee.org, to check out the conference agenda and register so you can join us in celebrating NAWLEE's 30th anniversary, our past presidents, our founders. The conference will be held April 13th through the 16th at the Sheraton Universal in LA. I look forward to seeing everyone there. Thank you again, panelists, past presidents, for today's inspiring discussion. We truly appreciate you, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
It's good
Thank
seeing
you.
you all again.